All right, folks, we're here with our new show with me and the Yama here. This is the ISD Wednesday War Room, and we're going to have some fun with this show, Jamie. If you were around and kind of heard some of our podcasts before, Jamie and I kind of went and looked more at the big picture on college football, that type of stuff, and we checked out a lot of different things and talked about a lot of different things, and so we wanted to kind of put this towards YouTube Live as well. So there's a lot of things we want to get to. I've got a whole lot of stuff that we'll get to. We'll answer some questions, but we're going to start off. You know what? Let's just start off with the questions because we do have quite a few questions, and I want to get to these right now. We'll start off kind of with the Notre Dame oriented stuff. We'll end with kind of college football in general. But if you have some questions, feel free to use the chat, and we will definitely take your questions in the chat. If you're there, feel free to type in your comments, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have via chat as well. Before we do that, we're going to start with some questions from ISD customers, our premium customers. First question is not named Lorenzo Styles. Which ND receiver becomes a major contributor to the offense the rest of the year and has 40 receptions, 500 yards, 6 TD stat line by the end of the year? My pick is Lindsey. That's what he has to say. What do you think there, James?
I mean, it's tough to pick right now based off of week one.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you would say Lindsey, you would pick him because he got 4 targets, and then like Jaden Thomas didn't get a target in the game, right? Yeah. And so I mean, I think you're kind of like shooting in the dark right there and saying, I guess you would say Lindsey, but I mean, it really could be anybody. It really could be anybody. And I think that's what's kind of like the mystery of it. And it's something that, I mean, I hate to say it because we've said it all over again. We don't know much about the receivers. We don't know much about the receivers. We didn't see them in camp. We don't know what Colsey's going to be back when he's ready. We don't know what Joe Wilkins could be that guy for all we know. Right.
Sure.
So, we just kind of have to wait and see.
Yeah. I would say about the same. It just, I really wish we had a better answer for that. But to be honest with you, we just don't even know what the offense is going to look like at this point. And I know that they're going to be looking for some answers this week, and hopefully they'll find it. But this week's got to be a big step forward for the offense, and I think we'll see it. And not just because they're playing a lesser opponent. My guess is they focus on it pretty heavily this week, and we'll see something different. Next question. What does a successful outcome from the offensive perspective look like for you on Saturday versus Marshall? We definitely need to get our playmakers the ball. Styles, Tyree, Lindsey, Mayer. We need to see Buckner take some shots downfield. What do you want to see from the offensive line to know they grew from week 1 to week 2? What do you think, Jamie?
Well, I want to see the offensive line specifically, just like cut down the mental errors. I think that's first and foremost, right? Like, don't make those same kind of mistakes that we saw against Ohio State. I want to see them run the ball. I want to see them run the ball. This is a team, it's a group of 5 team. They have a couple dudes on the defensive line that are all right, but this is a team that Notre Dame, I mean, if they're going to be a team where their identity is the offensive line and the stable of backs they have, you got to run for 200 plus easy on this team. That's just how it is. So that for me, I think, and yeah, you want to see Buckner spread the ball around, get these skill guys the ball, like have some guys emerge. And for me, it's not even the downfield shots because they took shots in the game. They just didn't do much else, right? You didn't see much else. And I think I want to see, I want to see them open up the playbook and do a little bit more of everything there with Buckner.
Yeah, for me, it's run the ball for sure. That's really, really critical. You got to be able to show that you can run the ball. They got to get better at it. I want to see them more assignment sound in the front. They too many blown assignments in the last game. Did not make sense to have that. I want to see them attack the middle of the field with a football. I want to see them get Buckner used to throwing the ball in the middle of the field and kind of hitting those seams past the linebackers in front of the safeties. I really want to see that. And as you said, hey, let's connect on some big plays. I want to see some explosive plays. if you can't make explosive plays against Marshall, who can you make them against? So to me, I think that's the big thing, and we'll see what happens. All right. Next question. Who do you think ends the season starting at wide receiver with Lorenzo Styles? I don't know. What do you think, Jamie?
I mean, I think it comes back to kind of what we said before, right? Like, I think the fact that Jaden Thomas earned that, spot out of camp, I mean, that's a good thing. But is that because Wilkins isn't healthy and Colsey isn't healthy yet? We don't know enough about that yet, right? So, to me, that boundary spot, especially like who's going to be a guy that they can go on the boundary and throw that back shoulder pass to, right? That kind of thing. I mean, that you need to get it. You can't just rely on putting Mayer on the boundary. Like, I don't think Mayer can play in the boundary as probably as much as they did on like third down where they're trying to get him. Like, you got to develop another guy there. And I really don't know who that guy is at this point, right? And then I think I would probably feel good about like Lindsey and Styles being the other two guys when you're going to go like 11 personnel, 3 wide. But it's that boundary thing that's kind of a mystery now, and it would just be a straight guess at this point.
Well, that's been the case. That's what we thought coming into this, Jamie. Was boundary was kind of the big question mark, and there was nobody there. I think a lot of people were hoping Deion Colsey would take that next step forward. In his defense, he was banged up all of fall camp, or a lot of it, and so it's hard to make a big step when you're not actually on the field practicing. And so, he'd practice some, and you'd like to see more. But at some point, he's got to step up and make some plays. And people forget he did make some plays last year when he was given a chance. And so I think it's just a matter of getting him healthy, and then we'll see what happens. So, once again, folks, if you got questions, feel free to use the chat on the side. You can just click there and add whatever questions or comments you want, and Jamie and I will answer your questions and comments. Also, if you haven't done this yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would. Just click on the subscribe button down there and click on the bell as well, and that'll alert you and let you know when we're going live, and also let you know that we got other videos that are up as well. So, next question. If you were the O-line coach, who would be your starting 5? What would it look like? Well, I think this week it would be the same, unless Jared Patterson wants to come in, or can play. And again, I'm not sure that we'll see him this week. I know a lot of people want to see him. It may be best not to play him and just make sure he's fully healthy for Cal and get him going. And if that's the case, if he's out, I think you start with the same group. But I would let the next group know that, hey, if some guys are not performing, be ready to play, because we're not waiting around for people to decide to play and play disciplined football. So that would be my only thing, is I would talk to the second team and guys that I felt like could play in this game, and I'd say, look, if people don't perform like we're hoping they will, you're going to be the guy in there. And if you want to earn a job and you want a chance to show what you can do, you better be ready to go. And so that's what I would do. I don't know about you, Jamie. You have any thoughts?
No, I think that's the way to do it. I think you have to challenge those guys. I think that has to be the attitude, because, Cal, although, on paper, they're not like talent-wise, they wouldn't match up to Notre Dame. I mean, they have some real guys on the defensive line. They have a pretty good defensive line, definitely guys that are going to play hard, and they're deeper than you would expect. Like, Cal's going to bring a defense, right? They're top 20 in SP plus in defense. So I think that's something that it's going to be more of a challenge than maybe some people know. So this is kind of the week where you kind of have to get it figured out. So if say like early in the game and you're not getting what you want out of the guard situation or anything like that, I mean, I think you got to look at some other guys there. I think that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and for me, it'd be a short hook. There has to be some accountability at some point, and let's hope we don't have any hooks. Let's hope those guys step forward and do what they're supposed to do, and we start to see what we were hoping to see at the beginning of the year. So, and again, we need to be reasonable in saying that they did go against pretty good defense. I mean, that's going to be. I
Yeah.
think they're going to really. I think Ohio State's defense is going to surprise some people this year. I think they're better than people thought. And it was interesting. I had a conversation today with a guy, and he was saying, "Hey, look, they were a lot better than even we anticipated. Because the safe or the linebackers played much better than they did, and they played more
Oh,
disciplined.
night and day from
Yeah,
last year.
and they were playing faster because they were in a totally different defensive scheme. And you could tell finally you could see the speed of that group, and so yeah, I think that Ohio State's going to surprise people defensively. Next question on the wide receiver group. Only a few years ago, we talked about the recruiting misses in the secondary and how it was very depleted in terms of talent. Now, I think we're all excited about the young talent coming in at wide receiver. Is it reasonable to expect the wide receiver group to make a similar turnaround, and how soon would that be? I got to believe, hopefully by the end of the year, you'll start to see Lorenzo Styles become the playmaker that we thought he would be. Hopefully it's sooner than that. Hopefully Deion Colsey and Jaden Thomas can do that. And then we got to hope that Tobias Merriweather takes a step and becomes a factor, later in the year, because he's going to have some opportunity if he can kind of learn what he needs to do. And I really think that he could be somebody who could be added to the list, hopefully by Clemson, somebody who's somebody that you can add, or certainly, they'd love to see it for Stanford and some of the BYU would love to see it, but that may be a little bit too early. But I'd love to see him kind of ease in halfway throughout the season, start getting a catch or two, and become a factor that, maybe there's 2 or 3 plays in the Clemson game where you could use his athleticism and his vertical ability. So anything you want to add, JMO?
Yeah, I think you got to look at how those guys progress during the year, and obviously their development, matters so much to answer that question. But I think you look at the class they're bringing in now, and obviously it's very difficult for freshman receivers to contribute right away, right? It just doesn't happen that often. But if I was going to say, like, out of the guys that Notre Dame has signed recently at receiver, I mean, if they keep the same guys in the class right now, I'd say Rico Flores and Jaden Greathouse are both 2 guys that I think are going to be able to compete early.
Yeah.
Like, they are more advanced technically than a lot of guys in this class. So I think when you look at that, and then obviously Braylon James, like, I mean, we'll see how his senior year is, but like physically, that is a guy, athletically, he's a guy who could maybe compete too. So, and obviously they're trying to add another one in the class as well too. So I think, they're going to have some guys there that I think have a chance to play and be better. And maybe they can be a Morrison or a Mickey kind of on the other side of the ball for Notre Dame.
All right, we don't have any more questions from ISD customers at this point, but if you want to ask your questions, feel free to go to the chat over there on the side and just click in and type in whatever question you want to ask, and we'll be happy to answer that. While we're waiting for that, Jamie, maybe we'll answer some at the end. I wanted to kind of go the big picture in football, the other teams and who impressed us, all that kind of stuff, and talk about some of the games this weekend. First of all, who impressed you last week when you got a chance to watch? I will say I did not get a chance to watch USC. I don't have the Pac-12 channel, so I didn't get to see them. I didn't see BYU, unfortunately. I would have loved to seen that game, but who impressed you?
Yeah, that BYU game got delayed, so I didn't whatever. So that's on my PVR. So I'm going to check that out probably in the next couple of days. I didn't see USC either, but I mean, just total. I mean, Georgia, I think, was the most obvious one.
Yeah.
To lose that many guys and to look the way that they did, I definitely think their offense last year was underrated. But even if you look at the offense, like, they lost Tremaine Burton to, he transferred to Alabama, and that he was going to be a big guy for them this year, and was a big guy from last year. And to not have like a Pickens in him, and the offense and those tight ends, oh my gosh, like, they are
talent there.
And then the thing is too, is about with even though they maybe have some old linemen that maybe haven't played as much, they're like older guys. They're also like a ton of guys who are like top 100, 5-star level dudes. So they just have so many dudes just like across the board and just athletes on defense. Like, um, man, they're going to be up there again. Like, I think they stood out to me. It's tough to say with some of the other, because I think, with week one, you don't really see like a full picture of it, just how dominant they were. And I don't think like Oregon, I don't think Oregon's great, but I don't think they're terrible. They're not gonna be terrible. They're certainly not gonna get beating the brakes off them like that, right? And that
Yeah,
was
it could have got it a lot worse. You know what I
it
mean?
could have been much worse. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that score could have been 100 if they wanted it to be. I mean, they really could have just put a huge number up on them and just absolutely dominate. Oregon could not do anything, and so I was not impressed with Oregon at all. I thought Tennessee actually looked pretty good. That's a team that can score some points, and they got a big challenge this weekend. We're going to talk about that. They're at Pitt, so that'll be an interesting game for them. But they're a team that could be kind of like an Ole Miss last year, where that's no easy game. When you're an SEC opponent, and you're going to have to bring your A game in order to get out of that. So they could play a spoiler role in the SEC for somebody this year just based off the offense, and we'll see. And I hate to see it or hate to say it, but I thought Michigan looked pretty darn good. Granted,
Yeah.
It was not a great team that they played. Everybody knows that, but they look good, and not just offensively but defensively they look good. A lot of people said, well, they may take a step back defensively, and they probably will. Will they be as great or as stout? I don't know. But I looking at them, they look pretty salty. Pretty athletic. But offensively, I think that it seems obvious it's going to be JJ McCarthy's team in the
Yeah.
end. McNamara, obviously is not very happy about the situation. But whenever McCarthy goes in there, good things happen. So, and that will probably take their offense up another level, I would think. And they got 2-3 really good running backs. They got some good talent at wide receiver. Their O-line, lost some guys, and they look pretty solid. Again, Colorado State, not a good team. There's a reason they fired their coach, and so
Yeah.
it's not a good team. You're going to look pretty good, but I thought they looked pretty good. Anybody else stand out to you?
Tennessee's another one that I do think, like, offensively. I mean, I think Heupel's a really good offensive coach.
No doubt.
I think he's proven it. I think they're explosive. I will get into that Pitt matchup later, but like, really, there wasn't a lot of teams. Michigan. I think people think that because their recruiting class was underwhelming, and their current recruiting class is a little bit underwhelming too. I think, and all this partly because Harbaugh was flirting with the NFL and all that.
Yeah.
But if you look at like who they have and what they had behind and which guys were ready to set up, like, they're ready made to be really good again. And personally, I don't think the Big Ten is going to be that strong this year. Like,
Yeah.
I guess if we,
Penn State's nobody. I mean,
Penn State does not look good to me.
No.
And-
Iowa's nobody. Wisconsin's got a good defense, but I'm not sold on their
Yeah.
offense yet.
I think the thing with Penn State, I think would be concerning if I was a Penn State fan, is they really had to rely on a lot of transfers to be good in that game. Like, and that's a bit scary because they've recruited pretty good. So I don't know why they're not better, And then obviously at the quarterback position, I mean, Clifford is trick or treat, right? Like, you don't know what you're going to get with him. And obviously, there was other stuff going on with him in that game. But like, I mean, and I don't think, like, obviously Purdue's not, like, they're not going to be great. I thought, like, even though the Pitt in West Virginia, this is obviously Big Ten, but Pitt, West Virginia was a fun game to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't think either of those teams were good.
No.
I wasn't impressed with either of those teams. So, and obviously it's the first week, it's opening. There's going to be a lot of sloppiness, whatever, right? And it's a rivalry game. There's that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot more of me being unimpressed with like Iowa and their offense is bad again for the 500th year in a row. Like, I mean, there's a lot more of that for me than being impressed with like a Georgia.
Yeah, sure, sure. I agree, and we're going to get to some of those teams because some of them are on Notre Dame's schedule, like Navy.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you know, so I mean, we didn't get a chance to watch Marshall. I haven't. I didn't watch a game. Did you get a
I
chance?
watched it.
And I know you put a kind of a thing up. I mean, what do you think of this team?
Well, I watched the Norfolk State game. After, not during. It was on an ESPN3 telecast.
Yeah,
Um, it looked like a high school football game. I'm not gonna lie. Like, just the I mean, Marshall was so much better than Norfolk State. Norfolk State's got to be one of the worst FCS teams. They have to be. They were bad. They were
yeah,
just bad all around. Bad up front. Looked like they were scared to play in the game in many senses. Tackled just horrendously. And a lot of the guys for Marshall, a lot of their starters only played like 25 plays.
yeah,
So it was like kind of like almost like a scrimmage.
yeah,
And I don't even think Marshall even played that well to start the game. They kind of started out like in a little bit slow. Um, I think Marshall, you know what? The one thing that stands out about them is they have some guys that could play for a lot of teams for that on Notre Dame schedule that are from Power 5 teams. Like the quarterback Columbi, he's a Texas Tech kid, was at Utah State before that. I mean, he can play. He's a pretty good quarterback. He's a good athlete. He's accurate. They got, Kalen LeBour was a 5-star running back out of went to Florida State, hadn't played in 3 years. He kind of like fizzled out, but he always had talent, and he fizzled out because of off the field stuff. It wasn't like
yeah,
talent that screwed him up. And then they have another back that's pretty good. So even without Rasheen Ali's the kid who's the really highly touted guy who was really good and was probably going to be the best player on the field for them, and he's out. He's got he's away from the team. Not sure what it is, but he's away from the team right now. But they're fine in the backfield, and they have some guys on defense, like 2 corners that I think probably like have a chance to be NFL draft picks. They got a really good Mike linebacker. They got an undersized Deanne who's got a great motor. Watts is the kid from Purdue who played at Purdue and started 20 games there. And I remember watching him for Purdue, and I liked him. I thought he was a good player. So they have some guys that can play. The problem is they just don't have enough guys, and then especially like up front where. And I think this is what I mentioned in the report that I did on them is Kane Madden. And you think about him, and obviously he was a Marshall guy, and he came from Marshall, and he was like the best guard in the Conference USA and, all American honors and all this stuff. And then he came to Notre Dame, and everybody saw his limitations. And like, just being completely honest, he was a below average starter for the standard that Notre Dame has at
yeah,
offensive line. Right.
yep,
And, and that was like the best guy in their
yeah,
league. So that kind of shows you where they're at in terms of the offensive line play. Like they don't have Ohio State's. They don't have DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson there. Like, I think their left tackle is not a very good football player. I mean, I think he's going to get eaten up in this game. And I think Notre Dame's going to dominate them up
yeah.
front.
Cal, as you mentioned, they got a pretty good D, but they lost their best player on D. So, I expect it to be a pretty sound game, defensively. I don't think they'll do much offensively, but I think it'll be a good test for Notre Dame, once they kind of, okay, hopefully they get rolling against Marshall. And then now we'll see against a fairly good defense what they'll look like, and we'll see what happens. But wasn't overly impressed with Cal. I didn't anticipate I would be, but like all teams, first game you're kind of just getting your feet wet, so they can certainly improve. But I just didn't see a whole lot of like talent. I saw some good players, but not a lot of great players.
Speed. I think they lack the speed,
Yeah,
especially at the
yeah,
skill positions.
yeah, exactly. North Carolina, I mean, jeez.
Oh my gosh.
That defense is just atrocious, and it ain't gonna get any better either. I don't think.
No.
You know, that's just gonna be. Can Notre Dame slow down their offense, and they'll be able to do
Yeah.
that certainly. So BYU, I didn't get a chance to look at them yet, so I don't know. Stanford I mean, this is their first game, isn't it? This week, or did they
Yeah.
play last
No,
week?
no, no. They played last week.
Oh, I didn't see who they played.
Yeah, they played Colgate, so it
Okay.
was like a game that
Yeah.
they should blow them out, and they did. So tough to say, but they're playing obviously USC this week.
Yeah.
So we'll learn a lot more about them. But I mean, I just look at Stanford and kind of like they're bringing a ton back from last year, right? So they have a lot of guys coming back from last year, but I mean, other than the tight end on offense, who scares you
Yeah.
on the team? And the quarterback's a good player, right? Tanner McKee is a good player, but who are the skill guys that scares you? Like they don't have some of the they don't have like a deep threat like the Simi Fioco kid that they had a few years back who was a really good deep ball threat there. They don't have like one of those big jump ball guys like they used to. They don't have the JJ Arcega-Whitehead. They have big guys, but they haven't been that same type of things. And they just are like have been completely uncreative on offense. And it's just like it feels like they're stuck in an offense that's from 10 years ago and they haven't changed much and added enough wrinkles to it. And they're just not dominant enough up front to get away with that. And so I'll be really interested to watch them against USC. And I just think on defensively, especially, pass rush, they don't have the guys. They don't have the guys that scare you. And that was the one thing that they had built over the time, especially those early years with Harbaugh and then early years of Shaw too, because they had Randy Hart, and Randy Hart was a heck of a defense line coach. Obviously, Mike from his time at Notre Dame. He's a really, really good coach. And I think he got the most out of a lot of those guys, turned a lot of 3-stars into NFL players. And I mean, that's a hard thing to do. And I just don't see it anymore. Like they don't have, and they don't have they don't have a Solomon Thomas or a Harrison Phillips there. I don't think so. Even having they lost their best guy. Thomas Booker was their best guy. Right. And so I'll be really interested to see them against USC this week, especially because I don't think USC's defense is going to be that good. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that it'll be an interesting, because I don't think that SC is going to put up some points on them, but Stanford may be able to put some points up on USC. But I think if they do, I wouldn't be overly alarmed by that because I just don't think that USC is going to have the kind of defense that you should really worry about at this point. I mean, they got some nice pieces, some nice players, but they don't have a good starting 11, and they certainly don't have the depth behind that to be a team that could handle, somebody who's a very physical team, but also has the ability to throw the football. So that will be interesting when Notre Dame plays USC, because I think offensively they'll be pretty darn good by the time Notre Dame plays it.
I do think that.
I mean, Notre Dame's going to have to score a lot of points in that game, but I think they'll be able to because I can't imagine USC will be very healthy either by that time when Notre Dame has to play them last game of the season. So
I think this year it would have been better. I mean, obviously they're playing at home to play middle of the year. Like I think that sets up worse for USC just because of the depth wise.
Yeah, I agree.
And what they're going to have, and I think also too they're a team too. If they get one injury up front on the offensive line, they could be cooked.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, folks, if you have some questions, we got some viewers here. So if you have some questions, feel free to ask some questions in the chat. Surprised we don't have any. I don't know. Chat window's open for me, so surprised we don't have any. Maybe I'm missing something. All right. Well, I watched UNLV. It was hard to say. I mean, they played such a bad team. I think it was it Idaho State? I think it was something like that.
What? You can't be ripping on the Bengals.
Oh, I'm just some really bad team. No. They were awful, but no. So I was watching them, and but I will say UNLV had a couple wide receivers, pretty good players, and their quarterback could throw the football. I mean, he could definitely throw. So, they may be able to put up some points and put a little bit of a scare in somebody, but I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens with that game. Syracuse, kind of a surprise win this weekend. I didn't get the chance to watch it. What'd you see?
I didn't watch that game. You know what's funny is that ISD's Matt Freeman just texted me out of the blue today, and he was like, he just saw the Syracuse score because he missed it,
Yeah.
and he didn't know that they really put it on Louisville, which could be scary for Louisville because they brought the bag out for a lot of those recruits, and I don't
Whether
know. I
they'll
mean,
stick around or not.
yeah, they better cut the check pretty quick if
Yeah.
they want to keep those guys, because I don't know if Satterfield's keeping his job. So
Yeah.
that would suck for Lance Taylor. Obviously, you're rooting for him, but I think with Syracuse, I knew they were going to have a good defense. They got talent, especially in their back seven. They got a lot of talent there, right? And they got good corners. They have really good linebackers too, and they play that 3-3-5, and it's really like that. It's from that San Diego State 3-3-5, and they do a lot of stuff to confuse you, and they're blitzing all over the place, and doing a lot of things to kind of like mix stuff up with the safeties and stuff too. And it's a really, really hard defense to play against. So I think that's a team that I think, could be a little frisky, especially that game going to be in the Carrier Dome. I don't think where maybe on paper heading into the season, you say, oh, well, Notre Dame's going to blow them out. It might not be that easy by the time they get to that game.
I think that they have a chance to. I just don't think Syracuse's O-line is going to hold up. They have not a very good offensive line, but I guess they did all right against Louisville. So who knows?
Yeah. I do think that the ACC, because there's always that like who is good in the ACC, like NC State looks kind of disappointing. I did watch that game, even though they're not on Notre Dame's schedule, but like at NC State, East Carolina, and that's a little bit of a tougher place to play, but like. I don't know.
They should have wiped them all over the field if you're the 13th team in the country. You know what I mean?
And, so all of a sudden where you're like, Miami, I don't know how good Miami is, but Miami might be the second best team in the ACC this year, because it's like things are wide open.
Bethune-Cookman, didn't they play? Yeah. So, So, I mean, what can you tell about that? Who knows? I mean, so they put 70 points up on that team. Big deal, Clemson, obviously, we got to watch that. It was an interesting game. It really was. I think Clemson still has some O-line issues.
Yes.
I don't think that they'll be able to fix those in time for the Notre Dame game. I think DJ will get better. Bo Collins stepped up and started to look like the player that a lot of people thought he would be. They got some talent there at wide receiver, certainly. It's interesting. I watched their defense, and at times they look just like world beaters, and at other times you're just like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of their D linemen are splash players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they just have like, holy crap, and then you don't see anything for them for about 4 or 5 plays, and then it's another holy crap. And they're just not consistent. But if you got enough of them, you can be a pretty good defense. So, it's crazy because you watched, even Brzee in that game, and boy, he made a ton of plays. You're just like, how are you going to stop this guy? And then you watch him getting bowled over a bunch of times too. And he's kind of a up and down guy, and a lot of their players are kind of like that when you watch them. So, your thoughts?
I feel the exact same way. I mean, I will say I really like, obviously Simpson is a stud at linebacker, but I think defensive line wise, they should be better.
Yeah.
Like, even though they're good, but they should be better. Like,
you can see the athleticism to where
gosh,
there's no way anybody should ever be able to do anything against that defensive front. But Georgia Tech was scoring points, and if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot a few times, they could have scored quite a few more points, really.
And I think there's, and that'll be something I think that will be something to monitor, especially with, because Venables isn't there anymore. And I think he brought some of that where, like, his whole mentality kind of rubbed off on the whole unit. And they had a lot of guys that always kind of like surpassed what their expectations were going into as recruits. Like guys who were like 4-star recruits, but played like 5-star
Yeah.
guys, right?
Yeah.
And they had
Yeah.
a lot of those guys on defense, especially on the defensive line. And now it's interesting because they've obviously got a lot of 5-star guys there, but it's like the 5-star guys haven't been as good, other than like a Christian Wilkins or a Dexter Lawrence. Those guys were really good, but like this from this most recent like big time class that they signed, I kind of just think like some of those guys, yeah, like you said, are. I mean, the motor isn't there every play.
Yeah.
You don't see it every play, but obviously, I think the defense has so much potential. But offensively, man, I don't know if they're going to be good on offense the whole year. And it obviously they don't lack for talent. I think some of the things are, probably the offensive line. They obviously they got a true freshman right tackle. That's got, that's something that you got to work through as well. But and they've recruited not as bad as you might think compared to like some of their other teams. So they should be better, but they have a really young staff on offense. Like it's a new play caller. So, maybe that guy's going to get a lot better, but just imagine, one of the things with like, say, Tommy Rees, when he first came to the job for Notre Dame, well, one of the things he had John McNulty there, who was kind of like his confidant, a guy who was obviously had all this experience and he could kind of lean on him. And obviously you have Brian Kelly as well, but like you have kind of that above, but Dabo isn't, he's not an X's and O's guy, right? That's not what he is. He's definitely not he's not a guy who's going to like take over play calling or whatever. Like even to the sense that like Urban doesn't get the reputation of X and O's guys, but he's like a smart coach, right?
Yeah.
And he could, if Urban had to take over an offense and call it, he could call it and do a good job, right? Where Dabo has never really been that guy, and they have such little experience, like really, like not a lot of guys who've coached at like the Power 5 level for a very long time. And I do wonder if it's going to be like, there's a big learning curve for a lot of guys.
Pains. Sure.
And then, so by the time you get to play, say like an Al Golden, who's obviously got, like decades of experience coaching, like, how are you going to match up in those kind of situations, even if the talent is good? Like, are you going to have the answers within the game too? Right. So, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch their offenses here. I mean, they're still going to win like, I don't know, 10, 11 games, whatever. Like they play in the ACC. I don't think the ACC is very good. I just don't think, I just don't know if they're going to be at that level when they don't have that generational quarterback. Their offense looks a lot more pedestrian.
Speaking of Al Golden, Irish fans are worried about NIL. I think we need some NIL for Al Golden. This is a guy, what he did this past week was just amazing. And I just hope, I anticipate this is going to continue, and hopefully Notre Dame can keep him for a while. And so, get your NIL checks out for Al Golden. That'd be a bigger signing than Keon Keeley or anybody else, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So hopefully, we'll see. It's one game, but I thought he did a masterful job. And as I've said on the show before, this is a guy that I've heard very, very good things about it, how smart he is, and in X's and O's, and can teach it, and that type of thing. And so I think Notre Dame may have found a special one. Let's hope so, because judging by one game, I'm feeling pretty good about the situation. I really am. Watch Boston College. Boy, their O-line just stinks. Man, that is bad.
Terrible.
They're just terrible. I think, surprisingly, the defense, again, they weren't playing a great team, but defensively, they looked kind of like BC always does. They're going to fight you. They're going to be somewhat tough and that type of thing. But Notre Dame should be able to score on them. But I think Phil Jurkovic's going to have a big long day when he comes to play Notre Dame. I just don't see that line getting better in a short period of time. So
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that O-line, obviously they lost. Mahogany was the guy who was the returning starter there and was going to be a really good player for them, and he's out for the year. So they're basically replacing
5
all
starters.
five. Yeah, all 5 starters. And those guys didn't look good at all. Like they really struggled. And I don't think Rutgers is going to be the best
Yeah.
defense they're going to face. So I think I mean, Dracovic, I think it was a mistake to, I mean, he probably wasn't going to be drafted high anyways, but it's not really set up for him to have a big year in terms of like, other than having Zay Flowers, who's obviously a very, very good player.
Yeah.
But you know, the next guy on their skill positions who got the most targets on the team, who had the most productive game, was George Takix.
Yeah.
And Takix is a good player.
Notre Dame could use Takix.
They can use him for sure. But
he's a good blocker. That's what they need.
Yeah. He's a good blocker, and you know what, and he can catch a ball and do these things too. And you know what? I think he's gonna go there this year and prove that he can play, and he'll get drafted probably in the NFL. Yeah. So track another.
He'll have a Brock Wright type of situation, I bet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And even if he doesn't get drafted, he'll like go and like make a team. Right. Yeah. And but if he's like your second guy, that's kind of a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then obviously, they couldn't protect Dracovic. They couldn't run the ball at all. You'd expect him to get a little bit better, but man, that offensive line just really hasn't looked the same the last few years. Yeah. And then I think, obviously Justin Fry was there before and did a tremendous job before he went to UCLA. And I think also too, like,
what a miss for Notre Dame. I cannot believe they hired Quinn over Fry. I can't believe they did that. It
does look really bad in hindsight. Yeah.
I mean, and everybody knew
we know why.
We all knew it. Well, we know why exactly, but we all knew that was a mistake too. So,
everybody did.
All right. Well, apparently, I wonder if the chat is not turned on. Somehow we didn't turn it on. I feel bad if that's the case, folks. We'll get it figured out. We had some technical difficulties again. I don't know. These computers, I don't know. It's just unbelievable. But we got it fixed. And, so next week we will definitely have everything squared away. We were in a panic mode trying to get this thing up and running. We were having some loop issues with echo and all kinds of stuff. So next week we'll definitely have that on. We want to apologize for that. Once again, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you go down to the bottom and subscribe, and we'll love to have you as a subscriber, and come to our next show. We'll definitely have the chat on. You can ask whatever questions you want. All right, Jamie, we're going to kind of close with the big games this weekend. We'll start with Alabama, Texas. I don't think Texas has a prayer. I really don't.
No.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how yours does in a game like this.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit. He looked pretty solid. Looked like a guy who could make some plays. But I just don't see it against Bama. I really don't.
I don't. I mean, the one thing that's interesting, and I wrote about this, I can't remember if it was last week or a couple weeks ago. This is only the third non-conference road game for Nick Saban since 2011.
Really? Yeah.
This, what kind of crap is this where he just gets to skate on by? He doesn't have enough 5 stars in this team to go out and play somebody. So, I mean, if maybe his team will get shell shocked because they have never done this before. But
no doubt.
I mean, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. And I mean, I think it's I saw the number was 20.5, and I would be surprised if they didn't cover.
I would be too. Wake Vandy. I mean, what do you think here? This is Vandy's 2-0 under Clark. What do you think about this?
I mean, Vandy could be a little frisky. I mean, I first of all, rooting for Clark Lee. I hope he does well. Good guy, obviously, great coach at Notre Dame. I think I would lean Vandy here just because I don't know. I don't know enough about Wake in terms of who they have behind Sam Hartman, and obviously that was a horrible situation. Your thoughts are with Hartman and all that, but I do think. Vandy, I want to see, I would just pick Vandy because I just want to see them in a bowl game. And I think it would be a great story. It's a great story if Vandy's in a bowl game.
If he could start 3-0, that would be quite a deal compared to last year. Granted they haven't played anybody amazing, but hey, it's still hard to win a football game. It just is. especially as
Yeah.
far down as they were. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
I know, and I'm rooting for Lee to make them respectable.
Yeah,
So
no
I hope
doubt.
they.
Tennessee Pitt, who you like there?
I like the Vols. I
I
like the
do too.
Vols there. Um, I just think. I just
Is
think
there a more
Narduzzi's. He's just so
awful? I
unlikable.
just hate Narduzzi. I can't
Yeah,
stand the dude, man.
yeah.
I hope he loses
He's.
every game. Every game. I can't stand him. Even if
I
they played
really.
Michigan, I think I'd probably cheer for Michigan.
I know.
You
It's
know,
really.
just
It's really to that point.
because Michigan's going to
Um.
win anyway. So I want them to
Yeah.
beat them by 100. You know, that's what I would love to see. But yeah,
Um. I don't know. Like I don't. I just
their
how
D
he
line did not
handled.
impress me in their first game against West Virginia.
Which I was a bit
I
surprised
was too.
actually,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
thought they were going to be better. Obviously, they lost some guys, but like it's still. I mean, and you mentioned I think that would be the one thing where I think maybe they would give Tennessee some trouble, but like I don't know. I just I think the Vols will score too many points, and then I don't see Pitt being able to score enough to hang
Yep.
with the Vols.
That's the way I see it too. Kentucky, Florida. Who you like in that game?
Kentucky. Kentucky, I
Interesting.
just think, Florida. Obviously, they won that Utah game, which I didn't think they were going to. And Richardson is a very good quarterback.
Yes,
I
he
mean,
is.
he's fun to watch. But I just for some reason, like Kentucky seems to own Florida,
Yeah.
and maybe that's just like Dan Mullen and
Yeah.
McElwain or whatever. But I don't know. I just have a feeling like Kentucky. I mean, it's not a game I would ever bet on, but it's definitely I would not take the Gators in this game because I just think like Kentucky just knows that they like belong against them, and they've had some success.
I actually think Florida is going to win. I think it's going to be very close, but I think Florida is going to eke one out. So that's just kind of the way I see it. USC, Stanford, I think it's Trojans all the way. Stanford may give them a game, but I just don't see Stanford scoring enough points. USC is going to score a bunch. So
Yeah,
I take the Trojans. Your thoughts?
yeah, I think they'll win by at least a couple touchdowns. I would be surprised if it was really close. I think 2 or 3 touchdowns would be my guess.
Baylor at BYU. It's one thing to play BYU. It's another to play them in Provo,
At BYU
Yeah.
is not like that's why if you're gonna play, that was good job by Jack Swarbrick
Yeah, no
getting to
doubt.
play them in Vegas and not having to go to that return game in Provo because that's a much harder place to play. They're it's a good crowd. It's high elevation. It's a tougher game, and I think Baylor. I mean, I think I would lean Baylor, but I think that's going to be a really really close game.
I agree with you. I think Baylor, they're starting to get their offense kind of figured out a little bit, and that defense is good.
The
I'm going to go
defense is
with
very
Baylor
good.
too. I'm going to go with Baylor too. But it's going to be a close one, real close. App State A&M, interesting game here. I watched A&M, and they look like A&M.
Yeah,
Sleepwalk, 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 and then oh boy, we better turn it on.
yeah,
And as App State showed, man, you can't sleepwalk on that team. They're
yeah.
gonna come and bring it. So it was interesting. I saw Lucas played a little bit. Anthony Lucas, and so I don't know. We'll see. I think E&M squeaks it out, but it wouldn't surprise me if App State gave them all they wanted.
Yeah, if like you told me that it was like tight in the third quarter
Yeah.
and then A&M had to kind of turn it on late and then maybe they win by 20, but it was like, a 1-score game late in the third. That sounds like the kind of game that would probably be to me. And I don't got a lot of trust in Jimbo. He's paid like he's Nick Saban, but he's not Nick Saban.
No, it's not even close. Iowa State at Iowa. I think if there's ever a chance for Campbell to do it, it'd be this year. But it is tough to beat them in Iowa. It just is. And traditionally, that game the same way. Although Iowa State has gone in there, but Iowa State has gone in there with the better team a couple of times and still lost. So
Yeah.
It just seems like Iowa just finds a way to win, and I'm gonna take Iowa in that. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to take Iowa too. I mean, although their offense looks putrid again, they're just really good at home,
Yeah.
and in that rivalry too, they just always seem to kind of. Campbell is. I mean, maybe he's beat him once, but like it seems like he never gets over. Can't get over the top with them, and that's been like a problem for them.
All right, last game, BC Va Tech. Virginia Tech didn't look so good either this week. So,
No,
I mean, this is kind of a toss-up, really. I don't
this is going to
know.
be one of those games that it's going to be like one of those entertaining games, and I have no idea who's going to win, but it's probably going to be like 35-31, and
Yeah,
it's going to be like back and forth at the end.
yeah,
Um, and either team, it wouldn't surprise me if they won, but I mean, I just was not impressed with BC at all.
no,
Like I it I actually think Jeff Affley's a pretty good coach,
I do too.
and I
Yeah,
think Tem Lukabu was the defense coordinator. Who was a guy whose name was getting thrown out for Notre Dame's defense coordinator spot. I think he's a good coach too, and I think their defense is pretty good. I think they're pretty good, but I just don't think offensively, man, I just don't know that they can block. So
yeah.
I mean, I probably would just say Virginia Tech and a squeaker.
That's what I was going to go with as well. The only reason I'm taking Tech is because it's there. It's the only reason, and it is a tough place to play. And
It-
Virginia Tech's probably looking at it as this may be one of our few chances to win this year.
yeah.
So I mean they're going to be a rebuilding program, no question about it. But I think that they have a chance to kind of surprise BC and pull it out here at the end. So that's kind of what I think. All right, folks. That's going to be it. If you're not a member of Irish Sports Daily, go to the front page and sign up for Irish Sports Daily. Click on the premium section. Again, next time we'll have the chat up and running. I don't know what I did wrong this time, but obviously I screwed it up. We will also be back next Wednesday doing the same thing. We'll answer your questions, and we'll talk about the big games coming up as well. Thanks for watching, folks. We will talk to you next week, and looking forward to this, man. We always have fun with this segment, Jamie.
Yeah, I do.
I
Yeah,
know.
it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And as the season goes along, you learn more about the Andy's opponents, and
Yeah.
that's always fun too. So.
All right, that's going to be it, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week.